Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Wikipedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. So today we'll pick up one specific topic that is actually very important for you, and most of you are looking around to get that, which is the amendment. Right? Your exams are approaching. You don't have lot many days up waiting for your examinations. It is just knocking on the door now, and you are not yet prepared with the amendments. So before completing the other videos for the syllabus, right, the syllabus most of you would have covered already, there's no issue with that, but the point is that you need the amendments before your examination. So I'm making an effort to cover up all the amendments in the lectures and post it for you so that you are ready with the amendments for your examination. And now if you look at the videos in the month of March itself, then in the month of April you have time to revise, and then it seeps down into you, and then you can write it down in your paper. Right? So today is the first class for the amendments. We'll take a couple of classes and cover all the amendments that have come in your corporate and allied laws. Right? So in your corporate law, basically the amendments that you have deals with the private company, the Nidhi company, government company, and the Section 8 company. Right? So Companies Act 113 has recently been notified. You know that, right? Now the provisions of that Companies Act is basically suitable for the listed company and the public companies, right? Not all the sections are very well suited with the smaller companies now, the private companies, the clubs, the Nidhi companies, right? That is because the public company, listed company, and the private company, Nidhi company, these are not at par, they are not at parity, right? The working of the company, the scale of operation, the scale of the company, the limits, the turnovers, there is a vast difference. So any provision which is very well suited for those type of companies, the bigger companies, will not necessarily suit very well with the smaller companies, right? So the institute has pinpointed those specific locations where certain provisions that are applicable on the public company or the listed companies are not very much necessary on these smaller companies, right? So they have made an effort to give an exemption from those sections to these smaller companies, right? So that is the kind of amendment you have. There is no procedural change, not major procedural change. There are only small bit of changes, small bit of exemptions that has been given in the various sections, right? So to start with, we will start with the Section 8 company. We'll see all the various exemptions that have been given to the Section 8 company. So to start with the exemptions of Section 8 company, first we'll have a brief glance on over the sections that have been covered. The sections in which we have certain amendments or certain exemptions for the Section 8 company, the not-for-profit companies, the clubs basically, right? So the list begins with Section 136. Section 136 deals with the right of the members to the copies of the audited financial statement. That is, after audit has been performed, the shareholders would get the financial statement before laying them to the general meeting. So over there has been given certain exemptions to the Section 8 companies. Then you have Section 149 that deals with the board of directors, the minimum number of directors, maximum number of directors, other requirements, right? Then you have Section 150. 150 deals with the data bank of the directors. Then you have Section 152, which is the appointment of directors. 160, right of person other than the retiring director to stand for the directorship of a company. Section 165 deals with the number of directorships, the maximum and the minimum, the maximum limit that has been prescribed for any director. Section 173 that deals with the meeting of the board. Section 174 again the quorum of that board meeting. Section 177 the audit committee, we have recently covered it in the lectures, right? Then you have Section 178 the nomination and remuneration committee, and also the stakeholder relationship committee, right? Then you have Section 179 which deals with the powers of the board, right? Then you have Section 184, this deals with the disclosure of the interest by the director. Section 188 is the related party transaction. Section 189 is the register of the contract or arrangement in which the directors are interested. So these are your 14 sections where you have amendments in your Section 8 companies. There are certain other sections as well, I will not deny, but that is beyond your scope. The company, the institute may not ask. There is always a very less probability, whatever, even if it is very less, there is always a chance that institute may ask you questions from somewhere beyond the syllabus that it has prescribed for you, right? Because in your syllabus for CA final, you have section 123 onwards from the Companies Act 2013, and below section 183 or the section 123, all the sections are covered for your IPCC. So there are some certain amendments in your IPCC section as well. We will not be covering those sections in your curriculum now, right? Once the entire amendment is done, I would see if we have time, we would discuss. There are very few little bit sections, basically 1 or 2 definitions where you have certain changes, right? Otherwise everything goes normal. There is no major change, right? So these are the basic sections that will have an amendment, that will have an exemption, and that too is very minute. Just one limit or one provision or one exemption has been changed, has been amended. Otherwise the section will apply as it is, right? So let us start with section 136. Section 136 deals with the right of the members to the copies of the audited financial statement, right? So now we need to understand the provisions of section 136, right? When will the audited financial statement be circulated? So before the general meeting, right, the members who are attending the general meeting have the right to receive the copies of the financial statement. They want to have a look at home before they are coming for the meeting. They want to have a look. They want to know what is there in the financial statement this time. So once the auditor has approved the financial statement, the directors will forward this financial statement to the members, right? And along with the financial statement, they will attach the auditor's report. They will attach the other annexures which has to be attached to the financial statement. So all these documents will be piled up and sent to the members, right? And along with the members, this will also be sent to the debenture trustees and to the debenture holders of the company, and to all other persons who are entitled to receive it, right? But what does the section say about the time limit within which, or how many days prior to the general meeting do you need to send this financial statement, right? So over here we will cover one section from your IPCC content also, that is section 101, because section 101 deals with your circulation of notice. The section says that you should circulate a notice 21 days before the general meeting, correct? You have seen that already. And now the section 136 talks about the same thing, but it is not talking about circulating the notice, it is talking about circulating the financial statements, right? But over here also the number of days, the limit for the number of days is 21. So you need to circulate the copy of financial statements at least 21 days before the general meeting. This is at least, this is not exactly 21 days. That okay, on 30th you have the board meeting, so on 7th or 8th, whichever is the 21st day before that, on that day we need to dispatch. No, that is not the case. That is at least 21 days gap should be there, right? So that because it will take time to be delivered, it will take time for them to analyze, to read, understand. They need some time. So 21 days, the Act thought is sufficient enough, right? But now this is the entire provision of 136. Now what is the exemption? So the exemption says that this limit of 21 days, right, would be over, and now 14 days will be applicable. So for the smaller companies, for the section 8 companies, 21 days gap is not required. If you're not able to send in 21 days, send it before 14 days. Right? Why has the gap been reduced? Because this is a smaller company. You don't have hell lot of people to send the financial statements to. Neither are your financial statement too big that the people will take time to analyze it. So they thought that 14 days is sufficient enough. Even if you send it 14 days before the general meeting, we will consider it to be a sufficient compliance of this section. So we will not burden you to be prepared 21 days beforehand and then send it to them and then wait for the meeting and stuff, right? 14 days will be enough. So you understand why these amendments are coming up? You may be getting the hint now that okay, these are just an attempt made for relaxing the provisions for them, right? So that is cleared. We'll move on to the next. So what is the next section? That is 149. That is the companies to have board of directors. Now what is the content of 149 if you remember? So if you have been through the lectures that have been posted, you definitely know section 149. This is the first section of the board. the directors. You have a big chapter director, right? This is the first section. This is the section from where the director starts. So in section 189, 149, you have the limit for the number of directors. So in a public company, you should have a minimum of 3 directors. In a private company, a minimum of 2 directors, and 1-person company, 1 director. And the maximum limit prescribed is 15, and if you want to go beyond 15, you will have to pass a special resolution. Remember that? And then also there were other provisions like at least 1 director should be Indian resident, greater than 182 days, provisions for women directors, provision for independent director as well. That in a listed company, right? In a listed public company actually, you should have more than 2 independent directors. Agreed? And it says at least 1/3 of your number of directors should be independent. And if there are 3, then it should be greater than 2. That means more than 2 should be independent, or 2 should be independent, greater than equal to 2. Right? Otherwise, if you have 10, then 1/3. And this 1/3 should be rounded up for the fraction. And you know that, yeah, managing director, whole-time director, nominee director, they are not independent directors. Only ordinary directors are independent directors. And then you had 6 conditions that had to be fulfilled to become directors. You remember those provisions? Now we won't enter to check what are the 6 conditions, right? Because that will be too cumbersome, and we don't require that for discussing the amendment, right? So basically the exemption that you have as per the exemption notification, section 8, the not-for-profit organization company, the not-for-profit company basically, the following provisions of section 149 is not applicable for these companies. Now what are those provisions? Minimum and maximum limit of the number of directors. There is no minimum requirement. You can have 1 director, no issues with that. There is no requirement of the maximum number of limit. You can have 30, 40, 50, how many directors you want in the company, you can have it, right? Because it is a club, right? In a club, there are many people who want to stand for directorship. They want to manage the club. This responsibility, that responsibility, you have various designations also. So for them, they say the number of directors will not be limited. That means if there is a person who is already director in 15 company, that means he has reached his limit. The company has 15 directors, the company has reached its limit. So if it is covered under section 149, it will not be able to expand. So for expansion, they will have to pass an SR, and such kinds of limitations are there, right? So the government has, the institute has thought, the Companies Act has given them the relaxation that you may increase it, no issues with that. We will not put the stringent regulation on you, right? The other thing is the requirement of the independent directors. So they do not need to have the minimum number of independent directors as well. There is no requirement of hiring an independent director at all. Even if they don't have an independent director, there is no issue, right? And now we need to see, if you remember the section for the independent directors, right? So who are the companies basically who need to have an independent director? Listed companies and the prescribed companies. And who are the prescribed companies? Just remember, it is 550. What is 5? 1050. What is 10? The minimum paid up share capital should, if it is more than 10. If you have a paid up share capital of greater than 10 crores, if you are a public company, then you will have to hire independent directors. If the public company has a turnover of greater than 100 crores, they will have to hire independent directors. And if their deposits and their debentures and stuff, if that is more than 50 crores, they will have to hire an independent director. So that was the requirement. So even if any of the section 8 company, right, qualifies that limit, they will not have to hire independent directors. And basically they will not be able to qualify the limit, because even if their paid up share capital is more than 100, they are not public companies, right? They are not public companies. So in any ways, the independent director will not be applicable on them. So they have already given them an exemption. No maximum minimum limit and no independent directors limit, right? Next you have the provisions of section 150, the data bank for independent directors. Now answer me one thing. Isn't it deemed that you will have to have an exemption over here? Because when the section 8 companies are not required to appoint the independent directors, why would they go and check the data bank? Why would they go and look for the suitable director into the data bank and then go for the appointment procedure? They won't, because they don't need an independent director. Even if they don't have an independent director, there's no issue with that. So what is the need? So automatically, if in section 149 independent directors have been exempted, then section 150 is deemed exemption. Right? So section 150 will not apply on section 8 companies. Got the point? Okay. Next we have section 152, the appointment of directors. So basically, why are we actually going through the entire provision? The only reason is that you are doing the amendment. So I want you to again revise along with your amendments. You need to know exactly where is the amendment placed, where is it located. So once I brush out the entire section, what happens is that you start connecting it with what you had studied, and then you again get back to that picturization that you had made in your mind, and then you fit that exemption in that picturization, and that is the purpose. So that when you get your questions in the examination, when you link to that picturization, you will see that amendment in that picturization in the back of your mind, in your subconscious mind. Right? That is the reason why I am discussing the entire section again before discussing the amendment. Otherwise, I could have just said this is exempt, this is exempt, this is exempt, this is exempt. That would be of no use for you, because if you want that, go on the website. If you don't know where it is located on the website, just Google it. You'll get the list of amendments that you have. But what is the point? That you have an exemption in 152. What is the exemption in 152? What is 152? That is what you need to understand, right? So we are discussing it. So 152 is the appointment of the directors. We know that the first director will be only individuals, and they will be appointed as per the provision of the article. And if there is nothing provided in the article, then the subscribers of the memorandum will be the first directors of the company until the next EGM. First EGM actually. Right? And in a one-person company, the member itself is the director. We have seen that, right? Now, section 153 subsection 3 also says that it is compulsory to allot DIN to every director under section 154. CG will allot DIN, right? Now you are going to section 152, you are starting to recollect things. Now we'll go to the place where we have the amendment, to the procedural part. So that person who is appointed as a director will furnish a DIN to the company, right? And the company will forward the DIN to the ROC in 30 days and whatever. But the point is, while it is furnishing the DIN to the company, along with it they are giving a declaration of non-disqualification. You remember? And there is one more document that they give. What is it? It is the consent to hold office. 152. Now what is that consent to hold office? The consent to hold office does not mean that the director comes and says, okay, I'm ready, I'll be there in your office, I don't have a problem. No, that is not the consent. Obviously the director doesn't have a problem. That is why he stood for the nomination. That is why he has been elected. Or even if he did not stand, if we are talking about the first director in case, then that is how the article has provided. If you were the subscribers of memorandum, you are an important part. You won't deny from being a director. We know. We don't need your consent. The consent means that you are saying that the director means to say that I am within the limit. Right? I am within the limit of number of directorships also. And we'll see further while we will be discussing section 165 that the limit for the number of directorship, that is 20, is again not applicable on the section 8 companies. So when the limit of directorship is not applicable, so why do you need the consent in the first place? No, that is logical, right? You understand. Why do you need the consent? The consent is to say that yeah, you fall below that limit, because we don't know your limit. I mean, we know the limit, but we don't know how many companies have you been directors already. So you will have to give a consent to the company. No, I'm within that 20. No problem. You can hire me. You can appoint me. That is the consent that the director gives. But now when there is no requirement of the 20, you can have n number of directorships. So why do we need your consent? We don't need your consent. Even if you are director in 100 other companies, we don't care. Right? So that is the amendment. So that is an exemption given in 152. So exemption notification, section 8, not for profit companies. Section 52, subsection 5, filing of the consent letter by the director is not required. Right? So understand? So that was the exemption in section 152. Now you understand the meaning of the consent letter. Now you understand what 152 is, and now you will understand what the exemption is. Right? Now the next we have section 160, the right of person other than the retiring director to stand for directorship. So if we discuss the provisions of section 160, right, then the requirement is that the director should not be disqualified under 152 that we have seen above, right, plus he should be eligible. Then any person who wants to be standing for the directorship of a company will send a notice plus rupees 1 lakh deposit. To whom? To the company, and the company will intimate the same within 7 days to the members, right? And that notice could be given by self or given by any member in writing. That was to be given 14 days prior to the general meeting. Remember the section now? Now we'll see what are the changes in this section, right? So basically there's one more thing that you need to understand, that whenever there is an election, then there is a method allotted in election, that is by ballot, right? Because why we are talking about ballot is that the exemption notification section 8 says that it shall not follow the provisions of 160 when the article provides for election of director by ballot. Now what is ballot? You need to understand. Ballot is basically a situation where you have a limited number of seats but more than the limited number of directors. That means, for example, if you have 4 seats but you have 12 directors to be appointed in that 4 seat, so out of those 12 you will select 4 and the rest 8 will go back home, right? So in those situations you always elect by the method of ballot, right, where you will cast your vote and whoever gets the maximum number of votes will take the first position, second, third, fourth, and like this they'll go on, right? There'll be a ballot, there'll be a position, whom do you want, whom you don't want. That is the kind of thing. Now we'll not get very detail into it, right? But now the problem is the exemption is given for the election of director by the ballot method, right? Now we need to now it is given for the ballot. Now we need to understand why. What was the requirement? Now suppose, what are we talking about? What kind of companies? That is section 8 companies, which is not for profit. It is a kind of a club, right? And in a normal company, if there are 4 directors to be elected or 2 directors to be elected, you have 2 directors over there for the voting also. The board will bring 2 directors. Okay, these are the 2 directors. Do you agree? Pass a resolution. We'll hire them on the board. We'll appoint them. Or if there is any problem, please say. Generally, that is what happens. If you have 2 seats, you have 2 directors contending for that, and the members say, okay, we agree, and the 2 directors take the position. Or if they say, no, this director, we don't want this director, then they'll call a third person. Okay, what about him? Okay, then we'll take him. Obviously, that third person not called, you will always have to display it in the notice. But I'm telling you in a general layman term what happens in a normal company. But in the case of a club, if you have 4 positions for director, there are 20 people coming up. Hey, I'll be the director, I want to be the director. So then you again go by the ballot method and then you are appointing a director. Now what happens when those 20 people raise their hand to be the director? They'll have to send a notice to the company 14 days in advance, and along with that notice they are supposed to send rupees 1 lakh, and that will be refundable only if either they are elected or they get 25% vote. Now think, if there are 20 directors contending for a position and 4 gets elected, then the 20 directors on the first hand will give 20 lakh rupees to the company. 4 of them will get elected. Those 4 people will get 4 lakh rupees back. Now suppose there is one more person who has got some vote by any means, because if anybody gets 25% vote, he gets elected in that situation. So there is no other person who has received 25% vote. That means all other 16 directors, 16 people who were standing for the nominations, their money will be forfeited and the company will get 16 lakh white amount, right? So do you think it's a fair dealing? Because companies can misuse this power. Whenever they want to raise money, they will have proxies. Yeah, we had 35 people standing, we have 35 lakh rupees now. They can do these things. Yeah, this happens in the market. That will be a scheme for them for raising money. Okay, next year we want to appoint 1 director. We have 50 nominations, 50 lakh rupees. No, jokes apart, this is what I want you to understand, that why the Companies Act has exempted this provision, application of this provision on them. and that is only in the situation of ballot, because in the situation of ballot only these things can happen. So they said, in the situation of ballot, that provision of sending 1 lakh rupees, the depositing of 1 lakh rupees will not be applicable. So you don't have to deposit any money, the company doesn't get anything, just stand for directorship whosoever wants, no problem with that. Got the point? Ready with it? So I think we'll keep it limited to that section in the lecture today. We'll continue with the other things. They are very short, we'll wind it up very quick in the next lecture, right? So there are a little sections remaining. We'll take it up in the next lecture. So until then, stay tuned. This is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you. Bye-bye.